Today we're jumping into a story that's, well, it's pretty disturbing. It's a really personal account from someone who says they found themselves in a therapy cult. And the craziest part? It was run by a fully licensed, totally respected therapist. This is one of those stories about someone looking for help and finding something much, much darker.
Yeah, he just comes right out with it. So this is a story about how I was in a group therapy cult. No beating around the bush. And you just have to stop and think, right? How on earth does a place that's supposed to be all about healing turn into a cult?
So, to really get what happened here, we're going to follow his story in 5 parts. We'll start with why he went looking for help in the first place, then get into the red flags, the crazy mind games, how he finally got out, and most importantly, what we can all learn from this whole mess.
Okay, first up, the search for connection. So let's just set the scene a little bit. What made him seek out group therapy to begin with? Honestly, his reasons are super relatable. He talks about being neurodivergent on the autism spectrum and having a tough time with social stuff. He'd been bullied in school, and now he's in his early 20s and just wants what most of us want. Friends, maybe a relationship, and he was really trying. He was putting himself out there, taking acting and dance classes, the whole 9 yards. So to him, group therapy felt like the perfect next step on that path to self-improvement.
And he didn't just pick anyone. The therapist he found had all the right credentials. A PhD, certified in group therapy, the whole shebang. Looked perfect on paper. But right from that very first session, the narrator says there were some seriously weird signs that something was off.
And this is where it gets really troubling. He brings up this really confusing memory from a school dance, something involving groping. And the therapist says this. Instead of, being a therapist and helping him process it, he basically just brushes it off, saying things like, some of those girls probably enjoyed it. I mean, come on. He's basically excusing sexual assault. That is a massive, massive red flag right there.
This just sums up the whole bait and switch perfectly. The therapist dangles this big, juicy carrot. The women in my group will go crazy over you. But what actually happens? The exact opposite. He gets there, the one woman who's even his age couldn't be less interested, and the rest of the group pretty much ignores him. He felt like a total outsider.
All right, let's get into the guts of it. This is really the core of the whole thing, the mechanics of control. How does a respected, licensed professional supposedly build a cult? Well, the narrator points to one very specific and very controversial technique.
He eventually figured out that what they were doing was a hidden form of something called attack therapy. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The group basically gangs up on one person, attacking them with harsh criticism. The idea is supposedly to break down their defenses to cause some kind of breakthrough, but yeah, pretty much everyone agrees it's just abusive and completely unethical.
And it all worked in this really twisted cycle. First, the therapist would tear someone down, mocking them and getting the whole group to join in. Then, once that person was completely broken, he'd suddenly switch gears and start comforting them, praising them. It's classic psychological whiplash, and it creates what's called a trauma bond. On top of that, he'd push people to cut ties with their families, isolating them until the group was the only thing they had left.
I mean, the guy had a whole bag of tricks. He'd mirror people's interests to make them think he was on their side. He'd actually praise people for being cruel to each other. Like, he would literally laugh if someone flipped another person off. And if anyone called him out on his behavior, he'd either brag about being manipulative, like it was some kind of special skill, or he'd just change the subject entirely.
So you have to be wondering, how did he finally escape all this? This brings us to the turning point, awakening and escape. And, getting out of a situation with this level of psychological control is not easy. For him, it was a really long, really hard journey.
The really shocking thing here is how long this went on. We're not talking about a few months. He was trapped in this group for 5 years. The first year was a blur of confusion, part thrill, part feeling torn down. By year 3, he was starting to seriously question things, but it still took 2 more years to finally get the courage to walk away for good.
And it wasn't just an emotional toll. Look at this number. Over those 5 years, he paid about $15,000. 15 grand for what he now calls systematic abuse. It just goes to show you, financial exploitation is almost always part of the package with this kind of manipulation.
And this was his mic drop moment, his final word to the therapist. After all those years of mind games, he left this voicemail. Just incredibly powerful. He's taking his power back, cutting the cord completely. That's the end of the nightmare and the first step toward getting his life back. Okay, so what's the big takeaway here?
What are the lessons we can pull from this nightmare? I mean, how does someone with all the right qualifications end up doing so much damage? And what are the signs that we should all be looking for?
This might be the scariest part of all. Publicly, this guy was a rock star, a licensed PhD, other therapists loved him, he was even married to a therapy professor. But behind the scenes, according to the narrator, it was a horror show of manipulation and abuse. It's a huge reminder that a fancy degree and a good reputation don't automatically mean someone is safe. So drawing from his own terrible experience, the narrator gives us this really helpful list of red flags to watch out for. You know, things like a therapist who tries to cut you off from your family, who actually brags about being manipulative, or who attacks you if you dare to question them. It's simple, really. Good therapy helps you become more independent. It's built on trust, not on fear and control.
And all of this really leaves us with one big, important question to think about. A story like this shows just how vulnerable we are when we decide to ask for help. It really makes you wonder, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen to other people? How do we build a world where reaching out for help is always a safe thing to do?